Okay, so what does Beyonce, Kelly Rowland, and Maria Solanki have in common? Welcome to the Raw Food Health Empowerment Show. I'm your host, Samantha Salmon, and we have some new news in the health and wellness world and in the vegan world as well. Kelly Rowland has joined Beyonce in her support for a plant-based diet. The Grammy Award winning singer has teamed up with Silk, a non dairy milk manufacturer, for an ad campaign, pushing her fans to switch from cow's milk to dairy free milk. Kelly, along with a number of other well known influencers, helped launch the Swap It with Silk, or the hashtag Swap It with Silk campaign on TikTok. Adults who consume the most dairy compared to those who consume the least, have the highest chance of dying young, according to a study published in the British Medical Journal. Those who consume the most dairy products had the highest risk of total mortality, cardiovascular mortality, and cancer mortality among 217,755 people from three major Harvard cohorts: the Nurses' Health Study, Nurses' Health Study 2, and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study. The researchers also discovered that replacing dairy with beans, healthy grains, or nuts reduced the risk of death. The danger increased when dairy is replaced with red and processed meat. So it's possible that substituting dairy for meat explains why dairy consumption is linked to a lower risk of death in some studies. The most protective diet, on the other hand, excludes both meat and dairy products. So I hear from adults all the time about how dairy is so hard to give up. And they're right, dairy is so addictive. It's even harder when we are indoctrinated to consume dairy from our youth. Today, joining me is Maria Solanki. If you haven't heard of her, Maria Solanki is a businesswoman, wife of an immigrant, and a mom of an 8-year-old daughter. As an education and animal rights activist, she promotes school choice around the country to help give children the best quality education possible, and has traveled the world spreading these two ideas. She spent 6 years living in India, volunteering with orphanages and an organization that rescued trafficked girls. She educated these girls into starting their own businesses so they were no longer victims, nor just survivors, but activists who thrived. Maria has successfully run her own business of teaching swim classes in both Asia and the USA. She does this all while being legally blind. She does not allow her disability to be an inability and tries to share her positivity with others so that no matter what challenges come their way, we always have a choice to live a successful and meaningful life and to help others. Welcome, Maria, to the Raw Food Health Empowerment Podcast. Tell us about your experience starting a vegan charter school.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. A few years ago, I wanted to start a charter school, and that was because I wasn't happy with the options that were there for my then 3-year-old daughter. Well, she was probably 4 when I started. And um, I just looked into, how do you start a charter school? And I wanted something that had an immersion program, but also a health and sustainability aspect to it. So I, along with several other people, compiled this massive application. And it was 500 pages, 22 sections, ranging from curriculum um, to finance, to school security and nutrition. Um, and our application was denied. It was denied for several reasons. Some of them were valid, but one of the reasons that it was denied was that, we wanted to talk about the negative effects of dairy milk. And according to the National School Lunch Program, you cannot discriminate against the drinking of cow's milk before school, after school, on school grounds, or at any school-sponsored event. And if you do discriminate, you don't get that reimbursement for the meal program. Without that reimbursement, it's very difficult for a school to balance their budget. So that was one of the reasons our application was denied, even though, we had a lot of other things in there that were great.
Yeah, so tell me, why did you think it was important to start a vegan charter school? Like as opposed to
Well,
like a private school maybe where you wouldn't have this resistance. Why charter?
yeah, sure. and I would use the word plant-based more than vegan, and because we know that not everyone coming to the school would be vegan or necessarily agree with the ethics, but the nutrition aspect of having more plants, more vegetables, more fruits is very important. There's so much research out there that if we do not provide proper nutrition, everything else falls apart, and we need to look at the child holistically. All these athletes understand that they need to eat properly if they want to throw a football or bounce a basketball, but yet here we are, educating nearly 50 million kids in the US K through 12, and we're not paying attention to the nutrition program. And so what happens, I mean, it always astonishes me that people think a pill the size of my pinky nail will cure them, but this whole plate of food has nothing to do with the entire body and everything that is put out by the body. Um, so everything falls apart, as I was saying. So when we have negative food, bad foods, we can get put onto medication, whether that's because of diabetes. 1 out of every 3 people diagnosed with diabetes right now in America is a child. Obesity brings so many other problems. Here in the state of Florida, we're talking about nearly 20% of kids are obese. Across the nation, that's 30%. In minorities, that rate raises to over 40%. And then they graduate from high school and now they're obese, and all these other health problems start coming in. So it's like, okay, you're trying to educate these kids, and yet we're not trying to keep them healthy. So I know, excuse me, myself, when I was on antibiotics probably 4 or 5 years ago, I felt so drugged up. I couldn't concentrate. I wasn't able to focus. And that's what putting all these medications into our body does. Um, it affects our liver, our kidneys. I mean, anyone that knows the slightest bit about nutrition can testify to this. And yet, all these policymakers, all of these elected officials don't pay attention to the nutrition. And when we're talking about 70% of African American students being lactose intolerant, and then we continue to give this to them, and we're already having this education gap in the community, well, yeah, they're now getting stomach aches and diarrhea and all these other issues because we continue to give them food that is not healthy for them. And so, you stop and wonder, well, what would happen if we change the meal program? We've seen this happen in prisons, and they've had an increase in positive behavior, a decrease in prison riots just by changing the meal program. I can say from personal experience, the kids I know that are like bouncing off the wall and crazy all have the worst diet. They eat the mac and cheese, the chicken nuggets, the grilled cheese, the pancakes, the hot dog, and like that's the extent of what they're eating. Versus, the kids that will have kale orange juice and these beautiful smoothies of spinach and fruit and throw in some hemp seeds. So it's huge. I mean, we can't just think we're going to do this for adults and give not give this to children. We need to take a holistic approach. You can't just say, I'm going to give you the best teacher, the best curriculum, and then give them crap to eat. It really needs to be holistic.
Yeah, and one of the craziest things I heard you say was like, when you were going through this battle with the application for the school, that, they were saying that you had to serve even milk before water. Like, tell us about that. Like, like
Well,
what?
yeah. So this is actually a federal program. So as school board, and the district, they have limited ability to change it in that moment. So the USDA regulates the National School Lunch Program, and they put out a memo probably 3 years ago. And basically, yes, you have to serve milk before water. And what some schools were doing were they were putting this giant jug of water, and then they put fruit slices in there to try to get kids to drink water. Well, I guess the USDA didn't like this, the lobbyists didn't like this, and they really try to push that. I mean, another thing is chocolate milk. Chocolate milk should not be in school. So even if you're going to keep the plain vanilla milk, then get rid of the chocolate milk. Like, I don't want chocolate soy milk in school. I don't, it's just loaded with sugar. We should not be giving kids all this sugar, from chips, which are plant-based, to ketchup that is plant-based. We should not be having this processed food in there. And that, then we can get into the money that is wasted from all this milk.
Yeah, get into it. Get into it.
Well,
Yes.
basically, you don't need to, the child does not need to drink the milk. It needs to be offered to them. But what a lot of people don't realize is that and a lot of schools don't realize, they can refuse milk, and then you can reuse that milk like the next day. But what happens is they continue to take the milk and then throw it away, and they don't reuse it. So we're constantly buying for milk to go into the garbage. Okay, so I've seen some reports that this is like 300 million a year of wasted milk. And I would say it's probably even more, because they're also being forced to take it versus drinking the water. But yeah, I mean, the soy milk is not reimbursed at the same price that cow's milk is reimbursed, let alone almond or oat or all the other plant-based milks. So usually you would just have to buy that a la carte, but the cost of a cow's milk container is like 20 cents. So that's already been subsidized like crazy to get it at 20 cents. So what we're saying is, or what I would like to do as a school board member, is bring more attention to this wasted money. Or so many people are always talking about they would love more money in schools to fund different programs, to increase salaries of teachers. Where do you cut the budget? Budget is so tight. I'm like, there are so many ways to cut budget and redirect funds. But you have to look into these things. And to me, 300 million is not a small amount of money. Or
Yeah.
$1 billion that they spend here and there on nutrition. But the killer part is, it's making the kids sick, and we're spending this money on it. If it was like, okay, we're going to give them whole food, locally grown and organic food, and it's going to cost more money. Okay, can we see the benefits of that? Great, let's pay for it. But when we're paying for something that's literally toxic to all these students, then why? I mean, I myself benefited from cutting dairy out. I was told to cut out dairy when I was a teenager because I had arthritis since I was 2 years old.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm not giving up ice cream and pizza. Like, no way. And I mean, I was paralyzed as a 2-year-old, could not walk, had to crawl around. In high school, I limped around. I'd had flare-ups. My elbow could not bend. It was just like this. Could not straighten. It was just bent like this. And then finally, 8 years ago, I started to cut out dairy almost 18 years ago, and I would cut it out, and I would have it occasionally. And then finally, 8 years ago, I cut it out 100%. So I was probably only having dairy about 90% of the time for 10 years. And it didn't help. When I cut it out 100%, I stopped having flare-ups in my eyes, which I have a lot of vision problems from having arthritis at 2 years old. I no longer had arthritis in my back. It disappeared from my knees. It disappeared from my elbow. I mean, it disappeared from all over my body. And this is something I battled with for nearly 30 years. So I've experienced the benefit of it. I've also experienced the indoctrination of thinking that cow's milk was good for my body, and the difficulty of getting rid of it for 10 years, which is why I had it, occasionally throughout those 10 years. So for me, like, my love for children, I have to do what I believe is best for those kids. I am a truth seeker, And I'm very passionate about getting this information out so families aren't fooled, aren't confused, and these kids can live a better and more successful life.
Can you explain when you say indoctrination at a young age around dairy? Like, what have you noticed and seen?
Hmm. That's an excellent question. And I don't think most people realize this, but it is everywhere. It is in curriculum. So when my daughter was 2 and 3 and we started going to the libraries here, the the different songs that they would sing, the books that we would read, all, not all, but many would have these little inclinations about dairy. Or another example, the Children Museum in downtown St. Pete, just 10-15 minutes away, they have like this giant cow with a bucket under its udder, and you can go and squeeze it, and water comes out so you can start milking the cow. And then you go into their little, they have like a little mini grocery store with little mini shopping cart, and you can take that shopping cart and you buy cow's milk, um her school papers. They would have, to sound out milk, they'd have ILK, and then you put the M in there to make the M sound, but then there would be a picture with a smiling cow on it. Um and this was just all the time, and her math to her reading to, um she just had something to do with a resource map recently on, I forget, the state of Oklahoma, and it was talking about like the dairy industry there. So it's constantly trying to normalize the drinking of cow's milk and just making this part of our day. Then you'd have different programs sponsoring it, like get a free chocolate milk at Chick-fil-A if you read a book. So yeah, you do see this all the time, in stories, and like I said, her curriculum and songs and rewards. So that's what we're talking about. They constantly put it in there. I mean, they're not trying to like get kids to eat avocados.
Yeah.
Like it's like very specific
Yeah.
to cow's milk.
And avocado farmers matter too. I'm gonna just say that,
Yes,
okay? So you could
absolutely.
see like all of this money is going into the dairy industry
Mhm.
to support them and indoctrinate the kids, have a stranglehold on the public school system, where I mean, for milk to be a priority over water, I mean,
I know.
honestly, I don't see how anybody could think that's okay. So the industry, from our perspective, in terms of like folks who follow the health and wellness scene, who follow the vegan scene, and the vegan scene has really taken over with plant-based meats, plant-based dairy, because of what you said. Like, most of us are allergic to dairy, because it's not something that we should be consuming. If the majority of the population can't digest it, that's not for us, right? We're not the
Mhm.
ones who are lacking, deficient, or whatever, intolerant or whatnot. That's the majority of the population, right? So that doesn't make sense. So it's just not something we should be consuming. But also from an environmental standpoint, like the more dairy cows we are, you know, feeding, the less actual people we can feed. I mean, from an environmental standpoint, it doesn't make sense. So it's just all around taxpayer money is going into
Right.
foster a sick population, a sick environment, something that's not sustainable. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
You know what was interesting? I remember reading something, when all the schools were on lockdown because of COVID. They were throwing away all this milk that was supposed to go in school lunches. And it was interesting because you would think, like, well, just because you're locked down doesn't mean you're not eating or drinking. So why is it that they're throwing it away? Well, because a lot of people actually didn't want it. A lot of students did not want it. And because they were in lockdown, they weren't forced to take it or forced to drink it. So unfortunately, they were, I don't know what's bailed out. whatever the term was, to subsidize additionally to cover the cost of all this wasted milk that they were just throwing away, because it has an expiration date that will come so quickly. But I just thought, I'm like, how is this making sense to anyone, that they would say, oh, poor dairy farmers, let us buy this milk that
Nobody wants.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the people are still there. COVID didn't kill all these people that were still in their homes that could have gone to the grocery store to buy that milk. So what were the people drinking instead of the milk? Because they weren't forced to drink it anymore. I mean, all of this just, it doesn't make sense. Like, I'm a free market capitalist, so I'm just like, this is not adding up. Like, how do they have such a claw on this? Like, who is, I mean, I guess you kind of know who's allowing it. The dairy industry is really pushing for it, but it's such a sham. It is such a sham. And I'm just waiting for, everyone to wake up to this truth and get tired of it, get angry at it. So, we stop the subsidies and can.
And you know what? For folks who may be listening to this and really concerned about the dairy farmers, because they're people too, and their families, and farmers across the board struggle financially, right? And my heart goes out to them. But it doesn't make sense to continue putting taxpayer money into a dying industry. There are organizations that are helping these farmers turn their business around so that they can focus on what people actually need and want, because more people are moving towards plant-based milks. That does need to grow, right? So we do need land. We need to be growing almonds. We need to be growing oat, all this stuff, cashews, all these things. And there are ways to pivot, and there are organizations that are doing that. Now, when we focus on kids and population health, and when we think about, like, for me as a health coach, I talk to so many adults that say, like, dairy is the hardest thing to get off of, and they have to, because they're dealing with stuff like what you dealt with: arthritis, type 2 diabetes, obesity, heart disease. I mean, Kelly Rowland actually mentioned that she lost her mother to heart disease, and she cut out dairy to lower her risk of disease. Beyonce, we know Beyonce, the reason why she's promoting a plant-based diet, she's used this lifestyle to help her get to a healthy weight and maintain a healthy weight. And so she's an advocate for it. There's so many people, more and more people every year advocating for this. Even Lizzo, she's, on this lifestyle. So, for her own health and well-being. So when you talk about indoctrination and things like this with the youth, what's happening in the school, I want to also highlight the fact that these celebrities, do carry influence, and having them do these campaigns and things on TikTok, I think, does kind of help to educate folks and have them realize there are other options. You don't have to consume something that's making you chronically sick. But what do you think? What would you like to see celebrities do more of? And then also, what can ordinary people do, like the regular folks?
Sure. Well, I'm not necessarily the biggest cheerleader for celebrities and just being, getting that peer pressure from them. However, I think having awareness to it, because so when I first started to go plant-based at 19, and I come from a family of hunter butchers, and my brother shot a deer at 14, cut the heart out, ate it while it was still pumping. So for me to go plant-based at that time, everyone's like, what happened to you? My aunt, I mean, family's from Italy. My aunt's like, "Ma, who washed your brain? Who washed your brain?" And I'm like, "Oh, brainwashed, okay." But I had such a problem because it was so foreign to everyone. There was one or two plant-based milks in the grocery store, and they're little containers for like $8. All right, I don't even think that company exists anymore. So I remember the first time I saw plant-based ice cream, I started tearing up. I was like, I can eat ice cream again. It was so cool. But now it's so mainstream. You can go into like steakhouses and find like vegan options, plant-based options. So I think it's great in that, and for that reason, to have celebrities promoting it, because they do have a following. Even though, I don't know all the celebrities you mentioned. I know Beyonce and Kelly Rowland. Was she in part of Beyonce's group,
Destiny's
right?
Child, yeah.
Yeah, and then who was the other one? Lizzo?
Well, Lizzo, yeah, Lizzo's like one of the top artists right now. Uh,
I'm like not into like, I don't know celebrities. I'm like a nerd that's into education and nutrition. So I'm not like into celebrity, but it's great for, so in that aspect, yes, it's great because they bring it to the mainstream. Um, and because they have that following, they can encourage them. I'm always cautious. So, like, what else are they encouraging people to do? What else are they trying to make mainstream that might not align with my views? But in this instance, it does. And I think it's phenomenal to, make this more mainstream, make it, because, like, especially like I was living in Italy, they're like, what does vegan mean? Or even in the US, people are like, okay, well, eat some chicken then. I'm like, chicken's not vegan. What? It's a fowl. Like, okay, I don't know. So people would always say these things to me. So I have seen the whole movement evolve in nearly 20 years. So I'm 37 now. So I've seen it all evolve in the last 18 years, and even living in India for a while, seeing it evolve there and seeing products come onto the shelf. So in that way, yes, it's definitely beneficial. As far as what we can do, well, one thing I do when I go into grocery stores and they don't have a product I want, I go up to the manager and I ask them for that product. So usually they need me to bring in like an empty one from another store so they can order that product. So for example, I wanted like no sugar plant-based yogurt, and that's what I did. I grabbed it from one grocery store, brought it to the next grocery store that was closer to me. And I mean, both of them were fairly same, but after I would do that, I would just bring in, I just wanted the one flavor. And then I started noticing they would order like three more flavors. Then they got three more companies. And now they have like this whole section of plant-based yogurt. First they had nothing like last month, and now they have all of these. So that's a small amount of activism that people can do for health, for whatever reason. Sometimes I'll get on the phone and I call them if like the different managers there, and I'll call the headquarters and tell them I want this cheese or this milk or this yogurt, whatever it is. But getting those products on the shelf, because some people won't go through that hassle. They'll just like, oh, it's not here, let me go to the other store, or it's not here, I'm just going to forget it. A lot of people browse when they're at the grocery store. So just having the products there, you never know when it'll be the BOGO deal of the week, or they'll give some other coupon and then someone else will try it as well. So I think that is one thing we can do. And then obviously just start, if you're not into it yet, just start little. Just try it out and watch some videos. There are so many videos out there that can motivate you. Doctors that, I don't know if you know Saray Stancic, Dr. Stancic, but her story is so crazy. Just having MS and being paralyzed, she couldn't even get onto a stationary bike to try to go for 2 or 3 minutes, and she was 28 years old. She had MS, to running triathlons from changing her diet. So I think watching those videos and getting informed will motivate you to try to cut it out. And then once you cut it out, and my experience was just so extreme. I had to sleep on the floor. I had so much back pain. It was excruciating pain. So for me, it's like, oh, I wish I would have done it sooner. I wish I would have listened to the doctors 10 years earlier. Yeah, but once you start having the benefits, it's like you don't want to go back to that. You just want to tell everyone else the truth, because the pain was so terrible.
Yeah, and then also like from a parent perspective or someone who really cares about public health, what can we do? So I know you are running for office for school board. how can
Oh,
we
yeah.
support you, right? So even if we're not in St. Petersburg, which is where you are, how can we show up to promote healthy food for children? Because this is part of your platform, this is part of your campaign. How can we each make a difference in this?
Yeah, I'm so glad you remembered because I totally forgot to bring that up. But yes, this is huge. I am running for school board because, I tried doing the charter application, they denied it. I tried going to school board meetings asking for healthier foods. They said, "Oh, great idea," but did nothing. I've collected hundreds of signatures to try to change the meal program. They didn't respond. So I'm like, y'all gonna lose your seat now. And that's done. We're going to have a better meal program. I want to get rid of all processed foods in schools. Switch to, obviously, we still have to keep the cow milk there, but at least I know the meal program and the National School Lunch Program, and I know how that works. And so I will make sure that kids know they do not need to drink it. Um, Although that technically goes against the National School Lunch Program because you're not allowed to discriminate against the drinking of cow's milk. And then I'll be like, all right, you come and sue me then. All right, we'll take this national. I would love to see you guys sue me. But I want to use my platform as school board, not just in the county, but at the state level and then at the national level. And we need to address this. So my website is mariaforstudents.com. You can follow me on Facebook. I do need to get a better Instagram presence up there. But volunteers, you just need to be a U.S. citizen to volunteer. You need to be a U.S. citizen to donate. And there's plenty of things people can do remotely, whether it's social media, sharing my posts, joining different groups in the area and sharing things in different groups. It's all about name recognition when it comes to school board. It's an election that is often overlooked, but I think it has so much importance, and I obviously have so much passion for it. So getting my name out there so I do take that seat so I can get down and dirty, going to work and change this meal program. But yes, you can volunteer remotely. Phone banking can be done remotely. Um, Basically, email me, maria@mariaforstudents.com, or just go to the website I mentioned, mariaforstudents.com, and donate. But we will get anyone set up any way they want. If you have other connections, make other connections so we can take this to the highest level.
Yes, thank you so much, Maria. We are so excited. We are so excited. We have a champion here in Florida. We have champions in all over, the country. When I hear you talking about this, it has me thinking about something Eric Adams said, who's now the mayor of New York City. For those who don't know, he said, we should not be putting taxpayer dollars into stuff that is making our population sick. We then again pay for it from, our taxpayer pot, of money, just dealing with the sickness on the back end. So we're subsidizing the industry, then we're subsidizing sickness to our students, then we're paying when they end up in the hospital because of
Right.
and with inflation and everything going on right now. I mean, we need to be really looking at stuff and
Right.
start acting in a financially wise way, even if we don't care
Right.
about human health. This is financially not
Right.
sustainable.
Absolutely. And who the largest consumer of pharmaceuticals are in the US? It's the animal agriculture industry. So we're constantly pumping kids with all these drugs that were given to the animals, and then absolutely, we give them sick food, and then we're paying for the medical bills. I'm like, what happened to the free market capitalism? Let's get back. This is exactly where the budget needs to change. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. People need
Yep.
to be on a better diet so it can save all taxpayers money.
Yes, yes, money exists. And Maria knows where to find it. So we are, and I'll put the website up again for folks who want to visit, mariaforstudents.com. Definitely sign up, donate, sign up to help volunteer. And everyone has a skill set that they can provide to push this movement forward. Maria, we are in full support of you and everything that you're trying to do. Thank you for being a voice and for educating us all, because we had no idea it was this bad. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for having me and giving me this platform.